I've started letting people in. Hopefully everybody is starting, their audio is starting to come online. I've gone ahead and disabled the waiting room. So anybody who comes in will be able to just pop in. Um, Thanks everybody for coming. I know it's the end of the day. I'm glad you can be with us. We're starting to wind down our week. I'm starting to recognize a bunch of names. So I do appreciate everybody coming. Today, I have Charlene with me. We're going to be doing a lesson deep dive on Introduction to Cybersecurity. Today is actually going to be some labs and some actually really exciting labs in the Introduction to Cybersecurity course. So without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and introduce ourselves. Oops. My name is Adam. I've been here at cyber.org for about 1.5 years now. I finally got a cool, fun picture. I was a teacher in the classroom for about 6 years. I taught in Japan for 2 years, and I taught in America for 4 years. I was in industry before that. So I worked as a server admin and a network admin. And that's kind of how I got my role in the classroom in CTE. And when I first got in the classroom, I didn't know CTE was a thing. Otherwise, I might have been tempted to jump straight into that. But I am really glad that that does exist and that students are able to get into that without having to wait and go to a trade school. And that's one of the reasons I love cyber.org. And one of the reasons I was convinced to come here is because now I feel like I have such an impact across the country as opposed to only in the classroom and only with a select few students, because now I can reach out to every one of you, and which then has a bigger impact to students across the country. And so without further ado, Charlene, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Adam. Hi, everyone. I'm Charlene Cooper. I have been here with the curriculum team at cyber.org for about 4 years now. And before that, I, for about 20 years, was a educator and then finished my career in education as an instructional coach. And like Adam said, love that I'm still able to work with teachers in this role and support them as they are teaching cybersecurity. So it's great to be here with you today.
And like I used to tell my students, Charlene is the professional. She's been here a long time and she was in the classroom a long time. I was only in the classroom a little while and I've only been here a little while. So sometimes I might be a little funny or a little goofy, whereas Charlene, she always keeps it very professional. But we're still going to have a lot of fun though. Today, what we want to do is in the beginning, we're going to have a kind of an introduction to recon and open source intelligence, often abbreviated as OSINT. We're going to get into network scanning with the Intro to Cybersecurity, using some tools called Nmap and ZenMap. If you've never heard of those, they're a lot of fun. They can be pretty interesting. They can be a little dangerous, so you should always use them in the right way. Then we're going to talk about what pen testing is, and we're going to use a lab called Exploiting with Metasploit. And that's going to be pretty exciting too. In the middle of that, we're going to have to close down all of our VMs and reboot them because these two particular labs aren't really meant to be run back to back. I'm going to mention that. So if anybody's in their VMs, they'll be kicked out. But I'll mention that when that happens. So to just kind of jump into it, we want to define what reconnaissance is. And essentially, we want to gain information about a computer or network that can be used to kind of help us get a further ability to attack or exploit a target or system, right? So we're going out and we're seeking information about something to help us get further into it. The goals typically for reconnaissance, so just to point out, these slides come from the lesson. So whenever you go to give the lesson on this lab, these slides come from there. And when we're done with this, I'm going to share this slideshow with everybody. So even if you don't have access yet, you'll be able to have this slideshow. So the goal of reconnaissance is to gather some or all of the following types of information. You want to kind of get a map of the general network layout of your target. You want to identify any hosts that are live, meaning that they are online, and get their IP addresses. You want to discover any kind of ports that might be open on any host. So that's kind of your trajectory, your way in. You want to identify running services and whatever version that they're using. And you want to, obviously, you want to get a fingerprint of the OS. So you want to know, are they running Windows? Are they running Mac? Linux. And you want a list of usernames and shares. And we're going to see later why this is important. And then we want to list any kind of vulnerabilities that this target system might have. So one way you can do a web search recon is something called Google Dorking. And this is free. This goes back to the open source intelligence. It only requires knowledge. It doesn't require anything special. This is the #1 tool for web search reconnaissance. We use what are called operators for extremely fine-tuned searches. And there's a lesson on this where we teach students how to do this and dive into that. There's a video. We just don't really have time for it today. That's why I'm not using the video today. Google Dorking has kind of a funny name, but it's the usage of advanced search operators in a Google search. And we include information that's not really intended for public viewing, but it hasn't been properly protected from the public web. So an example of data that can be found could be something like an admin login page or usernames and passwords that are just out there. The key to open source intelligence, it has to be something that is openly available on the internet. Okay, so you can't pay to get it, or it can't be hidden that you found through nefarious means. None of the things you find with Google Dorking are nefarious. They're all just, you have put a special term into Google and it has given you back something that was readily available on the internet, and which could be credit card information. It could be government or military data. So anytime you hear about a leak online, whether it's a credit card company leak or a bank leak, most recently we were talking here at the office about Acadian Ambulance, which is an ambulance company in South Louisiana. They had a leak. So that's how these kind of things happen. They get published on the internet, and then you find all this kind of information in it. So let's go ahead and define what OSINT is exactly. It's any information that can be gathered from free or public sources about any individual or organization. Kind of makes you wonder what's information out there about you, right? And I love this next one. So this information must be legally accessible. That means obviously you didn't get it by illegal means. By a member of the public. Examples are an Etsy review, tweets, or an open Twitter account, posting about a home on Zillow or a blog post. So Zillow, for instance, how many of you, someone could get an idea of how many rooms are in your house, what the layout of the house is, your address, and like if they know, just because they know your address. So if someone knows your address, they could find what your house looks like, what the inside is, where the master bedroom is, because of a tour that exists on Zillow. Yeah, very easily, Raymond and Mark said. Like just recently, I was looking at my house, old pictures of my house, and I think, wow, my house looks so much nicer before it was redecorated. They redid the kitchen and the living room, but the modern pictures are not on there, but the old pictures are. And I would imagine probably a good portion of us, our houses are on Zillow. And I'm not saying that to scare you. It's just that that's just one free thing that's online that you can find information about. So OSINT also includes information that has been leaked to the public and is available on the internet. So that's what I was referring to about those leaks from banks or credit card companies or anything like that. So like my bank, they tell me, hey, we found your information on the dark web, or your information was in this recent leak. And like my wife, she gets really upset when she hears about that. But I feel like I've seen so many leaks at this point that I don't really care anymore. Like I see a leak, so okay, well, I'm changing my passwords. It doesn't really stress me out, but I just know that there's leaks out there, and you just have to do your best to take care of changing your password. And that's why we try and teach students about strong passwords and the importance of changing passwords from time to time. But while the means with which they got that leak may have been illegal, now that the leak is on the internet publicly available, that is not illegal. That is a legal means of gathering information via open source intelligence. Is it ethical? No, but it is now posted publicly. Okay, so another thing we need to define is a network scanner. A network scanner is a software tool. It enumerates and fingerprints devices on a network. So that gives us two more terms: enumeration. Enumeration is identifying computers on a network and trying to find details such as their services, their file shares, their usernames, things like that. And like I said about usernames earlier, that's going to come in really handy later whenever we learn how to hack into a computer. Well, hack's not the right word, but when we learn how to access a computer. Fingerprinting is identifying a specific OS. So it's really handy to know how to get into a computer if you know what OS that they are using. Um, Nmap, this is a really popular school tool for scanning. So this it runs the original version, which we're going to use today, runs through command line interface or terminal in Kali. But there's also a graphical user interface version, which a lot of teachers ask me if we can install. And we actually do have it installed, and we're going to show it today. But it's on the server 22 VM, and it can be nicer to use, but being able to use and say that you can use Nmap is a lot more powerful as far as options and things that you can put in. Excuse me. So the question then is, how does it work? Nmap sends a lot of packets to the target network, and it just waits to see if it gets any responses. Does it get any acknowledgement responses from any devices? So it's kind of like poking people with a stick. And so while you have to use a little humor to kind of visualize this analogy, but think if you hear "ouch" from a person that you poke with a stick, they probably speak English. If you hear "hey," then maybe they speak Spanish. But if you don't hear anything, it's possibly that person is asleep or you know, dead. But you this is just a kind of an analogy to help students understand the packets that are going to computers. They're going to respond one way or another. And depending on how they respond, you can get an idea of whether the computers are online or if they use a certain operating system. So there are different tools for communicating with computers that work on different ports. And depending on the port that's open, using port scans, you can find what that computer has available for you to reach out and communicate with them. So Nmap has a bunch of different options for how it will work. Host discovery scan finds out what kind of hosts live there. Port scan, so you can find out, is TCP open? If it is, then well, that's going to be a super easy way to communicate on port 22. We can find OS detection. So are they using Windows 7 still? If they are, it's going to be pretty easy to access them because it's a very vulnerable operating system, and we're going to prove that today. Are they using the latest update and service pack for Windows 11? If they are, then they're going to be a lot better protected than someone who's still using the first operating system service pack for Windows 7. And that goes to the service and version scan. Something to keep in mind, though, with Nmap, if you have students who just decide, wow, this Nmap tool is pretty cool, I'm just going to scan the school and see what all the school has. Well, that's illegal. You can't just port scan anybody willy-nilly because you'll end up getting caught, and then you can be in a lot of trouble for doing that. So typically, you would only want to port scan on a network that you have control over or a virtual network, kind of like the one that we'll be working on today. So what I'm going to have here is I have a copy of the Nmap and ZenMap lab, 1-for-1, and it's inside of this PowerPoint. I'm going to pivot over to my actual teacher's lab, and we're going to put up a share for my Google Drive where you can log into the the student accounts that we have in my account. If you've been in my classroom before in one of the PDs this week, then this will be very familiar to you. But what I have here is a Google Drive. I'm going to go ahead and open it right quick. Let's see here. We'll just put it on my screen. Hopefully everybody can see that. What you're going to see is that there's a first column here is a teacher name. And you put your name in any number from 1 to 100. And then the nickname really isn't important. It's important to us. So if you have trouble, we know who to help. The username is what's important. You want to copy that username, and then everybody has the same password. Where you want to go then is to apps.cyber.org. And you're going to log in there. And you're going to see a website that looks a lot like this. You have three options. Apply for access if you've never been here before. You can learn more by going to our website, or you can go to login. And then on the login screen, I'm just going to go down to one that hopefully nobody's using. So I'm just going to 92 here. I'm just going to type presenter so nobody else puts a name in it. And I'm going to copy this. I'm going to put it in here. And then the password, like I mentioned, is password with all lowercase. And when I hit login, this is what you should see. You should see a classroom that has my name on it. And it says the teacher is Doe. Normally, as a teacher, your students would see teacher with your last name, and then the classroom name would be whatever you want to call it. Intro to Cybersecurity 1 or Period 1, Period 2. But as presenters, we each have a presenting classroom that has our last name in it. And so that's why this particular classroom is called Topher. When I do click on it as a student, you'll see that I have 4 machine options. And for the purpose of presenting today, we have 3 machines booted for this particular lab because we'll be using all 3 of them. So hopefully everybody has gotten to this point and that we've been able to follow along. I'm going to go ahead and exit out of this for now, because all I'm going to need at the moment is just that this window here. So I'm going to pop back over into my actual teacher pane. So as a teacher, this is what it looks like. You can see, I can see all these machines that are running in the classroom for all 100 students. Now, you wouldn't have 100 students, or if you do, say a prayer for you. But hopefully you would have maybe, 1 or 2 students. And I'm going to get into my machine. So as a teacher, you'll have one that's named after you, and it'll say teacher on it, and it won't have a password. When I display the password, you can see all the different students, their same password. The teacher isn't displayed. So if you do ever show this to your students, they won't see your teacher password. That's just a security feature. Now, for this particular lab, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get into Windows 7. So if everybody would open their Windows 7 machine. And we want to turn off the firewall so that we can actually scan. Because even though this Windows 7 machine is vulnerable, it still has a firewall turned on, and it still is preventing it from preventing us from accessing it. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to search firewall. So hit the start button and search firewall. And so whenever you see that, underneath where it says control panel, what we want is the one that says Windows Firewall. Wait a second, be sure everybody's with me. If anybody has a problem, type in chat. And if you do, if you let us know your teacher number, then we can easily jump in with you and give you a hand. Or feel free to come off mute as well and let us know I'm teacher number, and we can jump in and help you. So you click on Windows Firewall, and it'll bring you to the control panel, and you'll notice that currently we have everything green. So that means we're all good, but we don't want it to be good. We want it to be off, right? So on the left, do you see where it says turn Windows Firewall on or off? That's what we want to do. We want to turn it off. So we're going to click that, and we're presented with 2 options. So we want to hit the red X for Windows Firewall off for home and private, and off for public. And then after we've hit the radio button for that, for both of those, we're going to hit OK. Mark, you're saying you can't get into our classroom. The login wasn't working for you? That's weird. But like you said, like Charlene said, you are welcome to use your classroom. It's going to work exactly the same because we're not going to be port scanning each other. We're just port scanning the single machine. So if you turn on the same machines, it'll work the same for you. Also, if you get behind, don't stress it. It's just important to listen because this will be recorded and available later, and then you can always go back and watch the recording and pause and then catch up and then do it later. It's not, no stress. This is a low stress environment, right? Now we want to pivot over to another machine. So for you, if you click on the top, other machines, hopefully you'll only see 3 here, right? 3 running machines. For I, as a teacher, can see every machine running for everyone in the classroom. What I want to do is I want to go to my Windows Server 22 machine. So I'm not sure what order they'll be in for you. They can be in a different order for every student. But for me, it's my 3rd machine. So I'm going to click Connect on the Windows Server 22. And we're essentially going to do the exact same thing that we just did. For the networks here, for everyone, you're going to hit No. And then we're going to go to do kind of the same thing we did in Windows 7. We're going to go to here, down here. We're going to type search. Not, we're going to type search, sorry. In search, we're going to type firewall. And you should see Windows Defender Firewall under settings. That's the one we want. Give everybody a second to be sure they've gotten kind of pivoted over to their Windows Server. Windows Server can be a little unique. There might be people in here who are seeing it for the very first time. I actually really like the background on this one. I think it's super neat. I helped build this particular image. I think that this is a great tool because a lot of students in our classes might never get a chance to use Windows Server in their life because it's kind of unique for administrators to use. So I think it's really wonderful that we have the ability to use and show this to students in the classroom. So yes, so whenever you get in here, you would hit No when that pops up, come down to search and type firewall. And then under the settings option, you should see Windows Defender Firewall. We're just going to click on that. And then just like in Windows 7, you can see they haven't changed much, right? In the, how many years has it been? 10 years or so since, maybe more, 15 years. And not much has changed in the control panel. So now we're going to click on the left in the toolbar right here. We're going to click Turn Windows Defender Firewall on or off, just like we did in Windows 7. And once again, you should see that the radio button is on the green check. We want to move it to the red X for both private and public networks. And then we're going to hit OK. And then when it goes back to the other menu, they're going to be red instead of green. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move back to the Kali machine. So go other machines one more time. I'm going to go to our Kali machine. And so you should see this background, gray background, cyber.org range with Kali Linux in the bottom right corner. One thing that's going to be important is whenever we're doing this, it's good to take a note. You can look at it anytime, but I'm going to take a note of mine just to make them easy to reference while we're doing this. If you click other machines, any of your tabs will have your IP address of your current machine in the top left. But if you click other machines, you'll see the IP address of your machines. We're going to need those for this lab. So I'm going to write down really quick 10.15.81.4. That's a pretty easy one to remember. And I'm going to mark Kali next to it. Now, notice that every single one of these has 10.15 in the beginning. The reason for that is because the range was born on 10.15. And so that's just kind of an Easter egg as to why all of our IP addresses start with 10.15. And then my second one is 10.15.2.130. And that's W7, Windows 7. And server 22 is .74.21. Okay, So if you've made a note of all three, it'll be helpful. If you didn't, that's fine, because like I said, you can hit the other machines and see it anytime so that you can be able to type it in. But we're going to need them when we do the next step. So we're going to open Terminal, which is this black box in the top left of your screen. When you click it the first time, it might take a moment to open. And then we're going to look through data that's inside of Nmap. Excuse me. Notice that in this table, it gives us a few options that we can add. I'm sorry, I'm trying to make it a little bit bigger. That we can add to Nmap to be able to make it a little more powerful. And so whenever you originally type it, it just gives you all of the options that you can add. So what we want is Nmap space -S capital T. So option lowercase s capital T space and whatever the IP address, sorry, my mouse is in the way, whatever the IP address of your Windows 7 machine is. So for my Windows 7 machine, mine was 10.15.2.130. If you type mine in, it'll just ping my Windows 7 machine, and it'll give similar information to what yours is, but it'll give it for my machine, not for yours. And Charlene has also entered it into the chat if you wanted to copy it, but it won't have the IP address in it. Just as a quick note, I'm going to open a new terminal because I want to show you something. If you ever want to copy something into here from the chat, you can do that. Control-Alt-Shift brings up the clipboard on the left of your screen. If I go to chat where Charlene put that command in, I can right-click on it and copy and come over here into the clipboard and paste. And does everybody see that? I'm just going to make sure it's on the same line. And now I can highlight it. And I use Edge for work. And so I really dislike when it does that, gets in the way. So I'm going to copy that. Now I'm going to press Control-Alt-Shift again, make that go away. I'm going to come here and paste clipboard and notice it's here. But sometimes it will type it incorrectly. So you have to fix it, but it just depends on what's been added. But you can copy and paste things. So I just wanted to prove that you can copy paste things from the VMs to your actual machine. So I'm not going to do that, but I wanted to prove that it does work. I'm going to press enter. And notice it's starting an Nmap scan. And it did scan one IP address. And notice it says there's quite a few things here open. HTTP is open. There's a VNC, because that's how we connect our machines, is open. There's a few things that are unknown that are open, but NetBIOS and Microsoft DS are open. So there's a few interesting things to look at here. So the next thing, we're going to do the same port scan on a Server 22 machine. And we're going to see which one has the most open ports. I'm just going to prove that Windows 7 is a more vulnerable machine than the other one. So you can do the exact same command, the Nmap -S capital T space, and then the IP address. So all you have to do is change the last two octets. So here mine is 74.21. And then we're going to see very quickly that it's a little bit different, right? So here I had, does it say? It doesn't give me the number of how many are open, but it says 984 are closed. Here it says 992 are closed, but I only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 open. Whereas here I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 13, 14, 15, 16 open. So double the ports open on the Windows 7 machine. Hopefully that kind of makes sense to everybody. So we can do one more thing. We can press up, and we're going to run the same IP address this time. But actually, no, I'm sorry. We're going to delete the whole thing. We're going to use sudo because we want a little bit stronger. We want more power. So super user do, we're going to add that to the Nmap. We're going to type Nmap -v -o or capital O, sorry. And then dash dash OS scan guess, and then whatever the Windows 7 IP address was. So for me, my Windows 7 was 10.15.2.130. So I'll break this down for you. Or actually, can anybody guess what I'm trying to get this thing to do? Nobody? Well, the dash V stands for verbose. Okay. Um, we're trying to get it to tell us what the IP address, what the OS is, and we've also asked it to guess. So yes, we want the version, and we want to scan specifically for OS, and then we want it to guess what it might be. So we're gonna, and once you hit enter, it's gonna start running and it's gonna start thinking. So it's looking for open ports and it's thinking for a little while, and then once it finishes, we're gonna have to kind of browse through here and see. It's not gonna give us the exact OS most likely, but it's going to get us pretty close. Close enough to make an educated guess. So you can see right now it's trying OS detection. It also went to a couple of the ports and tried. Now, if we scroll up, it's giving you a few. Okay, so aggressive OS guesses. It's probably either Windows 7 or Server 2008. So Server 2008 and Windows 7 were built on the same kernel. So that's why it gives you both of those guesses. And it's telling you within 97% accuracy that it's probably one of those two things. We know, but it's actually Windows 7, so that's a pretty good guess. And then, with a little bit less accuracy, it's telling you that it could be Windows Server 2011, which was also built on a similar kernel. And then it gives you a whole bunch of other options. But what's very interesting is if you look down around here, it says here, it tells you the service pack as well. With 96% accuracy, they're telling you it's probably either Service Pack 0 or Service Pack 1. So that kind of gives you an idea of what it could be. And then he also gives you the fingerprint of the TCP/IP protocol. So it's pretty interesting. We're starting to see just how powerful this thing can be. So I told you that we were going to try both the Nmap, which is the CLI version that we're working in, and you can see it's really not that difficult to use if you know what the commands look like. But let's move over to the graphical user version. So if we go to other machines and swap over to Windows Server 22, where we turned off that firewall earlier. So ZenMap is just a GUI version of Nmap, meaning it's has a graphical user interface. The pros to using ZenMap are that it offers extra features, and the results are easier to read. The downside is that it's never installed by default on any operating system. There may be like some penetration testers operating system, kind of like Kali, or maybe like Parrot OS or something. But you pretty much always also need administrative privileges to install it on any system. Now, in Server 22, in the search bar down here, we're going to type Zen. So hopefully everybody's been able to open it. And in the search bar, all I did was type Zen, and it instantly shows me where I have ZenMap installed as one of the apps here. And then we're going to go ahead and open that. And it takes it a second. Server is pretty heavy lift, and we're running it on a pretty lightweight machine. So sometimes it does take a moment for things to open. You can close the Defender firewall if you want. It doesn't really need to be open. Okay, so whenever you'll notice that whenever ZenMap boots, there's no target, right? There's nothing to look at. We have to tell it what we want to look at. There's a profile area that has intent scan selected, so we know it's going to be an intent scan. And the command section is already filled in. So one of the benefits of ZenMap is we don't have to add those options that we added earlier. We're just going to tell it who we want to Scan and then press scan, right? So we're going to do that. We're going to, in the target box, we're going to type our Windows 7 IP address again. So mine was 10.15.2.130. Then press tab on the keyboard. And we're good with this. We can just hit scan and you'll see it start working. It's going to take, it does take a little while, right? Because earlier, like in the CLI version, it takes a little while for it to scan. But in here, it also, takes a little while to work. And then after this, we're actually going to try and scan our Kali machine as well, see what we can find there. Now, if students have followed directions and they've opened up their firewalls, they can scan each other. If you wanted to kind of extend this, they can scan each other's machines in the classroom, but it's not necessary. So one student can scan just their own machines. Still working. It looks like it's still working. It's been a while since I've tried to use Nmap. Okay, let's try. No, so the host hasn't, there's nothing popped up here yet, so I'm assuming it's not done. Normally you'll have an output here of the host and the OS whenever it's finished. Because whenever we go to scan the Kali machine, it would we be able to filter between them. Oh, yep, see, still working. Notice it's also doing an OS detection. Because we told it to do an intent scan, not only did it do the normal scan that we ran the first time, it also does the OS scan, trying to figure out what kind of OS it has. So that's one of the reasons it takes a little bit longer than normal. Mm-hmm. I will say the only um, hard part about using the range is, and just cybersecurity tools in general, maybe, is patience for students. Whenever you have a classroom of students and you're trying to have them exercise patience while tools are running, can be a challenge. So I would say with trying to think of really we need to wait until it's done before we move to the next part though. Otherwise, I don't say there's something else we can do. Oh, there we go. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to do the Kali right quick too. So hopefully yours is about finished up. I'm going to type in my Kali address. Oops. And I'm going to hit scan. Um, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and hit scan. I don't know that the Kali will take as long. I haven't run a Kali one in a while, so I don't know how long that one's going to take. Hopefully not as long as the Windows one did. Um, So while this is running, we did do kind of the same thing in command line. This is a little bit more, I guess verbose is a good word for it. This has found out more information. So notice Kali's already done. If you click, you can filter by whatever host you've looked at. And whenever you come here to this particular host, you can look at the ports that are available. It'll show you all the ports. So the reason I said some people like ZenMap is because it's a little more well organized and easier to filter through rather than scrolling up and down through command line. You can look at the topology. It just shows you the hosts that are in that network. I can zoom in to make it a little easier to see. And so you can see here that we're actually connected to through a local host to this. The host details. I was gonna see if it's in here. Yeah, it says already in here Windows 7, our Windows Server 2008. And we've done one scan. If I come to this one, you can see it's Linux 3.1. It doesn't have the information as to what version of Linux it is. It just knows it is Linux. So it doesn't say particularly that it's a Kali. It tells you about some ports that are being used and open. Yeah. So here it shows that Kali only has 2 ports open. So it's actually more secure than even the server was. Anytime you click on a host, you can see icons that kind of represent what it might be. Notice that there has little penguins, for instance, on the Kali machine. These penguins here. And also it tells you kind of the level of vulnerability of something too. This one's pretty well locked up, so it has a little safe. Whereas this one has a bomb on it, meaning that it's it could be ready for to explode. Like you can just hop in there and do what you need to do. They say that the icons for vulnerability, the safe is 0 to 2 open ports, whereas the bomb means it has 9 or more open ports. And if you were to scan the server, I think the server probably would have been like a file folder or something, meaning it only had like 7 or 8 open ports. So and that pretty much does it for this particular lab. Like you can just kind of search through and review all the tabs. But basically, what OS version is installed on the Kali machine, we saw that it was Linux 3.1. Based on the information for the host details tab. Oh, that's actually an excellent question, Raymond. So this might be kind of small, what I'm trying to present, right? So if we want to see this a little bit better, earlier I pulled up the Control-Alt-Shift. So Control plus Alt plus Shift. I thank you for asking. If you press Control Alt Shift, I showed you a clipboard on here, but that's not all of it. If you scroll down, you'll see that there's ways to change the mouse simulation. There's ways to add like an on-screen keyboard. But at the very bottom is this display. And you can zoom in to make this bigger for you to present to the back of the classroom. The only downside then is that while this is bigger and that's lovely, you now have to scroll around your screen depending on how much you've zoomed in. So that can make it a bit challenging, but we often do this whenever we're presenting to make things a little bit bigger and easier to see. But it's per VM. So just keep that in mind. Like when you swap VMs, it'll reset that for every VM. So you have to zoom into each one and they'll be zoomed at different levels. It really just depends, Nancy. Nancy asked what ports should be closed for personal use. It just depends on OS. It depends on what tools you have. It depends on what programs you have installed. Are you sharing anything on the internet, stuff like that? There's lots of ports that are used for lots of things. Like if you play Xbox Live, it uses like port 33,374 or something like that. If you do that. So it just really depends on what you do online. Okay, so what a threat actor wants to use a vulnerability found on a certain CVE, they would need to know what software is used with that CVE. But now let me pivot back to my presentation. Um, oh, I sorry, I forgot there was a actual video sound attached to this, but we don't need that. Um, the so um, I don't. Oh, it's on the next episode slide. Okay. Um, so while we look at this, Charlene's going to reset our machines. So you're going to lose access while she closes them, and then she's going to reopen a Windows 7 and a Kali machine. Uh, but basically, the pen tester is someone who would use tools like Nmap and ZenMap. Um, Typically, just in case you didn't know, we have on our, not necessarily aligned to the Intro to Cybersecurity course, but aligned to some of our other courses, we have these career profile cards. But the career profile cards are really beautiful, and we have actual packs of cards that we tend to hand out whenever we go and we present somewhere. But on the website, there are printables that you can print either poster size or card size to help students learn about these career profile cards. The pen tester is super interesting because a lot of the tools that we learn about in the Intro to Cybersecurity course work really well on a resume for someone going into pen testing or even OSINT. So it's pretty neat and something just to look into. But um, the, it's it's a job that you do typically need a degree for, especially like cybersecurity certifications. Uh, but I think it's an exciting job that probably a lot of students could get behind to really help get them interested and participating in class. I don't need don't need that. Okay. Um, so just to it's gonna keep happening, isn't it? I I wasn't expecting that. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to define a few things to help us get to the next lab. And one of the first things we want to define is exploit. Pen testers or hackers, they look for a way into places where they don't belong. Um, and to do this, they need an exploit. Um, so to define exploit, it's a piece of software or a code or commands used to take advantage of a vulnerability on a computer system. They can be used to get access to the system. Um, they basically to get remote access to perform actions on a target PC. They disable the system by creating an OS or system crash for a denial of service. Basically, what they'll do is they'll get in and then they'll change their permissions, what they call privilege escalation, to become a root user or an administrator. So that's the end goal is they want to weigh in, and then once in, they want to pivot to become a more privileged user. And then they'll use that to do things like steal data like passwords or valuable documents. So that way, then you get the leak that normally happens. Generally, the install method is to gain access in the future. So they have things like a backdoor. And we have labs for things like that in our cybersecurity course. I don't think we have a backdoor lab in intro, but I know in cybersecurity, we not only have a backdoor, but we have backdoor removal for like rats, for remote access Trojans, things like that. It's pretty fascinating. The Metasploit framework is something we're going to play with in a moment. It became very, very famous because it used an exploit to get into a computer and do things like open a web camera, uh, uh, privilege escalation, things like that. It's an application that has a bundle of exploits that will work on multiple vulnerabilities. It was not meant to be bad, right? It originally wasn't meant to be something for bad. It was meant for remote access for security professionals. It's an open source tool. It works as a pen testing code repository. So it's for pen testers who are doing this as their job, right? New exploits were added regularly, basically as more people from the community were contributing to this program. So basically nowadays we teach it about it on cybersecurity courses, and it's part of certification exams because it's something that everybody learns about as just a really famous tool. So the exploit is basically the way into the system to deliver a payload, but the payload is the attack code to execute after you're already in the system. So you want something like command line access, or you want to be able to upload and execute a file. You want to be able to capture the screen of what someone's doing. So let's say there's banking information being put in. You want a key log, so you want to be able to take their keystrokes and see what they're typing in their passwords. Or you want to install a backdoor, so it's very easy for you to get back in another time. That's what the payloads are for, and we're going to look into that. Metasploit is super modular, which means you can mix and match all these different types of exploits and payloads. So with that, Charlene, are we good to go? Okay, perfect. Okay, so I guess I need to close this window. Okay, so one of the first things we want to do, this lab is called exfiltration with Mimikatz. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about, actually, I'm just going to put this back on the screen for just a moment. Recently, I'll give you the backstory, right? So this brew gang, the Breaches Are Us, has performed a data breach on SPAC. It's a professional social networking site. BRU stole the profile data from millions of SPAC users, which included their, every time I read this, I laugh because I think of Slack. So saying SPAC always makes me laugh. Usernames, passwords, and company names. The BRU makes money by installing ransomware on network servers of banks and hospitals and other organizations. Their ransomware encrypts the server data, making it impossible for organizations to continue normal operations. So these organizational victims will pay millions to get the decryption key. This might sound far-fetched to you, but like I was saying about Acadian Ambulance, this just happened a week ago, and it continues to happen all the time. So this is not far-fetched. This is a real-life type things that happen. Today, BRU is targeting the Nice Peeps Corporation, NPCs. Their goal is to infect the NPC Ubuntu server with the WannaCry ransomware. So this is a real ransomware that did exist. If you were on computers in 2017, you may or may not be very familiar with it. It's kind of funny. Some people from our company were able to take a picture with Marcus, one of the guys who helped bring it all to a halt. So that's pretty cool. So the attack scenario here. At NPC, an employee named Goofy. And this is what I was saying earlier, being able to get information about what kind of computer is very important. So Goofy has a company Windows 7 computer. His profile was part of the SPAC breach, which means BRU knows that he works at NPC. This is the important information that we already know that's going to help us complete this attack a little bit later. They have his SPAC password. BRU gang knows that many people use the same credentials for multiple accounts. So their attack starts by targeting Goofy's Windows 7 computer. With the breach data and by doing recon, Brew has gathered the following info. So we know Goofy's username is Goofy. So that's very important. We're going to use that in a moment. His password is happy123, also very important. We're going to use that in a moment. The OS he uses is Windows 7, so we're going to be attacking a Windows 7 machine. His IP address, and then the open ports. So all this is going to help us be able to get into the machine using Metasploit. And then just to kind of show you what's going on, this is kind of a picture of what this scenario looks like. So they're going to use Metasploit to attack a vulnerability that wasn't patched on his machine because we know he's using an old Windows 7 machine. The Mimikatz module has exfiltrated password hashes for all the users, including the network admin. And then we're going to use a tool called John the Ripper to crack the backup admin password. And then we're going to log into the server with the backup admin credentials. So that's how this is all going to work. So the only thing you really need here is Kali and Windows 7. So essentially, in the real world, what they would do is steal credentials and then using a login from a person who they've gotten it from, and then taking those credentials back, and they're just cracking them until now they now have admin passwords that they can log back in and do all the bad things with. Hopefully that all made sense. I know I said a lot of different things very quickly, but hopefully everybody was able to follow me. Okay, so I'm going to get into my Kali machine first. That's where we all want to be in Kali. So I'll give everybody a second to get there. My chat went away, so let me pull the chat back up. And then, of course, the first thing we want to do is open up a terminal. Usually pretty much how we all, oh, well, I'm sorry. I didn't think about it, but we actually need to open up Windows 7, turn off the firewall. As weak as Windows 7 is, we still need to turn off the firewall. There are ways around it, but as far as making it easy for our students, just going in and turning off the firewall makes it a lot easier. So so I do apologize. Go into Windows 7, and then open the Start menu, type Firewall, and then once again under Control Panel, we're going to click on Firewall. If we had skipped this step, it would make it a lot more challenging, and we'd have been wondering why it wasn't working. So what you'll have to do, Rick, is click on Other Machines, and then or hit Close. Actually, probably is a better idea. And then it should take you back to the classroom. And then in the classroom, you should only have the two options. And so whatever your teacher number was, well, no, actually, you're not a teacher. You're one of the students. But if you hit Close, it should take you back to the screen where you have the machines. In worst case scenario, if you hit Refresh, it should refresh, and then you'll see the machine options. Did that work for you? Okay, perfect. Oh, nope, not Kali. I need Windows. Yeah, I was afraid that might happen, and I guess I should have been a little more descriptive. Because like earlier, when I opened up mine and went back here, it was still like Windows Server shutting down. And I should have mentioned that to everybody that most likely this will be the case. Please close and then or possibly refresh. So once you've opened Windows 7, I'm going to close this and do it again. Hit Start, type Firewall, and then under Control Panel, so the second option here should be Windows Firewall. We're going to click it. And then in the left panel, we're going to hit Turn Off Firewall, or Turn Windows Firewall on or off. And we want to change both the radio buttons to the red X. When you do that, you hit OK. And then you should see everything is red, and it should say Windows Firewall turned off. If you hit Other Machines, then we can go back to Kali. Now we should all be here, and I'm going to wait just a moment for us. Now we're going to have to open a terminal. So if you're in Kali, go ahead and open a terminal window. I'm going to make mine just a little bit bigger, so it'll be easier for us to read. I'm also going to zoom in on it. All I did was Control-Shift++ to zoom in. Alternatively, you can edit and zoom in or zoom out. Okay, so if everybody's good, what I want in order to start this, I'm going to type sudo, sudo, superuser do, so I'm giving superuser rights, msf console, enter. This is going to take a moment, but what this is going to do is it's going to launch the Metasploit framework console. And when it does launch, you should see a little splash screen, and everybody's splash screen is probably going to be unique. So whatever you see on mine might not be exactly what you see on yours. But what's most important is it says starting the Metasploit framework console. And then notice on mine, I have no idea what this is. Broccoli or an explosion. every time it's something different. I say every time, but it's not always different.
It looks like
I
a
think
cow's
it
head
kind of, if you type the command
of
banner,
a
I think
bull. Yeah.
if you type banner, it gives you a new one. So now I have a heart with the Metasploit M inside of it. I like doing this just to see all kind of interesting things they have. I know, like, here's a little ninja. Um, you should see something pretty interesting there. But that's like just a little, another little Easter egg for today. That if you type banner, you'll see something different. That's not in the lab. That's just my Easter egg to you. So now we want to type help space search, enter. I think there is one of banners that is a cow. Um, but I have no idea what that first thing was. It's the first time I'd ever seen it. I think in all the times I've ever opened this. And so you can see a whole bunch of options here that we can use. One of the options here is search for a certain CVE exploit. Now, we want to search for a very specific exploit because we know that they're using Windows. So we want an exploit for Windows specifically. So search, type, exploit, space, platform, Windows. So what kind of search? What type of search is exploit? What platform is Windows? So the way this command is structured is we're doing a search. What type of search are we doing? Is an exploit. We're looking for an exploit. And then what platform is this exploit on? It's on Windows. When I hit enter here, it's going to give me a lot of options. So we can narrow down the search by adding a little bit of extra information. We know that it was x64 based operating system. So I'm going to just press up and it's going to give me the exact same thing I previously typed. And I'm going to add arch colon 64 because it's going to be a 64-bit system. So I'm going to just type all that in. Oh, yeah. Charlene got it right before I did. And then if I hit enter here, you're going to notice I have a lot less options, but still 131 options is a lot of options, right? So it's more than we want. So the Brew Gang heard, or BRU gang heard, that Eternal Blue hacking tools work very well on Windows port 445. I don't know how many of us were in the Eternal Blue trial that I did yesterday, but that's the thing that pretty much shut down the majority of the world for a little while. They work very well on Windows port 445. So one of the Eternal Blue vulnerabilities is categorized as what's called MS17-10143. So we can go to a certain website and use the search bar to look up a certain CVE. And then we can scroll down and see like kind of which one has the highest score. But for sake of time, we're not going to go through that. We're just going to search for a certain CVE because I already know which one it is. So we're going to type search CVE colon 2017 because that's whenever all this stuff happened. 0143. Now we should have a lot less options, right? We went from like, I think it was like 200 or 300 options down to 131 options. Now we have 4 options. So we're going to use exploit 0, which corrupts the kernel pool. It's Eternal Blue. These are all technically Eternal Blue. There's Eternal Synergy, and then there was Pulsar. But the original Eternal Blue is the one that we're going to use. Yes, sorry. Let me just press up in my thing here. Search, I'm sorry, I went a little too fast that time. Search CVE 2017 and dash 0143. So this particular lab is under 8.4.2, and the lab is called exfiltration with Mimikatz. Somebody asked what unit and section number. So this unit 8, it's near the end. So this is not using Metasploit is not something we teach in the very beginning of the year. In fact, in Intro to Cybersecurity, there's no real like hacking, so to speak, for the first half of the year. Because some parents, when they hear that, oh my God, my child's going to learn how to hack in the 8th grade, well, we don't introduce any of that right away. We kind of break them into it, and not to mention that very first lesson that they do is that ethics agreement, right? So they've already agreed to that, and then they've been kind of slowly introduced to everything, and then the hacky type stuff happens in the second half of the year. Does that kind of answer your question? I've seen you in a few of the chats. iPhone, I don't remember what your name is. I apologize.
Karen, thank you.
Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to delete this. We're going to type use space 0. This one's a lot easier to type than the other ones. So notice it gave us an error, but not really an error. So when you type use 0, it's saying, hey, you didn't really configure a payload. We're just going to default to Windows 64-bit with an interpreter and reverse TCP, which is technically fine, but we want to set a few things. So we're going to type show options. So show space options, and it's going to show us all the options that are currently set for this particular version. When we hit enter, you can see that currently we have an IP address set. We don't know what that IP address goes to. We have a port set, and it's just kind of giving us a few different things, but we need to change these things. So we're going to set the host. It's called our host. We're going to set that to the IP address of our Windows 7 machine. We're going to set the username and the password name, because remember, we learned those in that original exploit. So type set capital R hosts. So all one word, all capital, and then the IP address of your Windows 7 machine, which I just realized will have changed. So the ones I had previously are now useless. If I hit other machines, I can write down my IP. Wow, that's a unique IP address. 10.15.79.100 for me. It is important that you write down your own Windows 7 IP address, because if you get in and start controlling the machine, we would all be getting in and controlling the same machine, and it might cause issues. So do be sure you write down your Windows 7 IP address. 10.15.79.100. And when I hit enter, it should accept it. It will have a red thing that pops up that's telling you you have an error. So if I type, I don't know, set our hosts 10.15.79.100. Oh no, that did work. Oh, that's actually, I have no idea what's going to happen now. I was expecting it to give me an error because it doesn't exist. So hopefully I didn't break everything. We'll see what happens. So set next is SM. Don't type what I typed. I was just trying to give you an example of a mistake, but it accepted it. So I have no idea why. Now here, SMB user goofy. Set SMB. If you misspell SMB user, it will not work because you didn't set properly the SMB user. So I'm hoping that misspelling our host is going to not make a difference. We're going to find out when we do the show options later. I'm going to hit enter, and now it shows that it accepted that SMB user as goofy. The last thing we're going to do, set SMB pass. This is the password for goofy, which is happy123. So these are the same for everybody. everyone will type set SMB user goofy with a capital S, capital M, capital B, and capital U. And everybody will type set SMB pass happy123, all lowercase, which is capital S, capital M, capital B, capital P. Now, just to verify, right, we're going to type show options one more time. And you can see, if we scroll up, that some things have changed here. Like if I go up a little bit further, you can see I had no R host originally. I had no password originally and no user originally. So if I go down here, now my R host is my IP address, my password is happy123, my user is goofy. So now the last thing we need to do is exploit. If you type exploit and hit enter, we should take us to the next level, which is getting into the machine. So you should get a bunch of green here, not a bunch of red. If you get a bunch of red, it's most likely because SMB user or SMB pass was mistyped. I'm just mentioning that because that's the most common error that I see in PDs whenever we do this. And normally I can easily fix it by just retyping that. And notice at the bottom it says win. It means that we're in. And now we have our if I scroll up far enough, notice that before our thing here said MSF6. We were in the Metasploit framework 6 console. That's what we were working in. Now we're working in Meterpreter. So just to show where we're at, I can type PWD and look where we're at. We're not in home Kali. We're in C:/Windows/System32. Well, that's fascinating. So with that, we're actually knocking on time for this particular lab. I do want to, and I do apologize that we're not going to completely finish the lab. But what I am going to do is I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording so that we can move to a Q&A session. Just in case there's anybody that doesn't feel comfortable, asking questions during a Q&A. So yes, so thank you everybody for attending and watching.